I mean, a lot of men wrap up their identity in what they do, not necessarily who they are, separate from what they do. And when you're married, you're doing these things for those that you love. And then when that comes to an end, especially if you're getting married in that kind of like really formative years of knowing who you are, coming out of that, it is very easy to feel lost because
The shocking truth about divorce and masculinity, because I know you have your podcast. And so what
yeah.
inspired you to come up with your podcast title and also today's topic?
Yeah, good questions. So the podcast name is Multifaceted Masculinity, and
I
that
love the
is
name.
really, thank you. It's really an arc of my own personal journey. You know, I had what I called it was a there but not there dad. So he was there growing up, but a lot of my memories were of him on the couch, and so I didn't really learn masculinity. I didn't learn what it was like to be a man, and then I joined the Marine Corps, and a lot of the softer sides of masculinity or the healthier sides, you know, I mean, just the hard truth of the Marine Corps is they're training killers, right? And so you're taught to shut that part of you off to be effective. And um, and then I got out of the Marines, got married, was married for almost 12 years, and ultimately ended up getting divorced. And I am remarried now, but um, so the name Multifaceted Masculinity is really even the guests that I have on there, it is both a passion of mine because I do the coaching, obviously, but also, and I say this often when I have guests on, it's like selfishly, I'm having a guest on because I want to pick their brain and I want to learn from them and I want to grow in my own masculinity and to explore that softer, like how do you balance that softer side with that stronger side, and what does it look like to be a healthy father and a present father, and how do you juggle everything in life, and how do you pursue your wife, like all those things. I've been on a journey for probably 20 years almost now,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
of navigating, rewiring a lot of parts of who I am to explore what that healthier side is. And so that's kind of the a simple answer as far as the name of the podcast itself. And
Yes.
then as far as the divorce, man, um, so much of my identity was wrapped up in being a married man. And so when it came to the point where we ended up getting a divorce, um I found myself being a shell of a man. You know, and I would even say probably a few years leading up to the divorce. You know, I was slowly losing myself in my marriage, and then when it came to an end, I didn't know who I was. And you know, I met my wife in Africa doing missions work, and so there was a spiritual component about it, and so my God fell apart, my marriage fell apart, my identity fell apart, and kind of like you said in your intro, I found myself at a point where I had a gun to my head. You know, it was only God's grace that I didn't squeeze the trigger, and really spent probably it was about 2 years before I met my now wife, of really kind of rebuilding who I am and what is my spirituality and what are my giftings and all of that. And so, I mean, we can get into any one of those topics, but um, yeah, I lost myself when I lost my marriage because nobody goes into a marriage planning on a divorce, right? And so when I found myself there, it was just the heaps of shame and I'm a failure and who am I without my wife and what does it look like to be a single dad, and you know, just all of those things came tumbling down. And then the grief, you know, the death of the marriage,
Mhm.
um, grieving not only what the beautiful moments we shared together, but also grieving the dreams and the promises that we had for our future together,
Yes.
and seeing it for what it was, which is the death of the most intimate relationship that you can have.
Mhm.
And so it affects masculinity, in so many different ways, that it's not a surprise that a lot of men want to essentially escape that pain and that sense of loss, both in the marriage as well as themselves. when they realize that their marriage is no more.
Yeah. Wow. So many questions. So how many years did you serve in the Marines?
I only needed 4 to know I wasn't going to stay in. Um, I went in all bright eyed at 18, thinking I was going to do 20, and I had this whole plan. But I joined September 12th of 2000 and got out September 11th of 2004. So in during a very interesting time, to say the least.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, 4 years was enough for me.
Yeah. No, I get it. And this isn't even in my notes because just
Yeah,
what you unpacked is an episode within itself, right? Because I want to ask you, in your opinion, I know women get lost and they get lost in a marriage and they go through their divorce and they're like, who am I now? But I think men, I don't think that's discussed enough as far as
yeah,
who we are outside of a divorce. I don't think we talk about that enough. What are your
yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I mean, you look at men's desire to protect, to provide, to build something. Um, there's a great book by Alison Armstrong called The Amazing Development of Men, and it talks about, she kind of breaks it down in 4 stages, and kind of what we as men desire and lean into in those different stages. And for a lot of men, if they get married in their 20s or 30s, they're in that kind of building phase, right? They're in that prince phase. They haven't arrived to that king kind of established in who they are. And that's when, like I said, I was building with my wife, within our brokenness and our hurt and our pain, but we were building something together. We were building a family. It was the first time we had kids. It was the first time I tried and failed at a business and then launched another one. And and so just that journey, it became more and more of who I was, that I am a married man. I'm providing, I'm protecting this woman. Now I'm protecting this child, in both emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of that.
Hmm.
And yes, that's my role, but it also becomes my identity, right? Because it's, I mean, a lot of men wrap up their identity in what they do, not necessarily who they are, separate from what they do. And when you're married, you're doing these things for those that you love. And then when that comes to an end, especially if you're getting married in that kind of like really formative years of knowing who you are, um, coming out of that, it is very easy to feel lost, because it's kind of like a house built on pillars, and all of a sudden some of those pillars come knocking down underneath you,
Hmm.
and your house isn't stable anymore. You don't really know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, I literally had to ask myself, who am I separate from my wife?
Hmm.
What do I love doing? Because it had morphed into, what I love doing is what we love doing,
Hmm.
right? And just that whole process of slowly, even in an unhealthy way, letting go of those passions that I had and those hobbies that I had, because now you're in the, part of it is you're just in the throes of a 2 month old, a 2 year old, a 5 year old, and mom's barely sleeping, and just all of that, right? And so some of your life does get put on hold, but you can very easily come out of that place with your identity a little up in the air. And then for me, my marriage being at a place where we we were essentially going in separate paths, as far as
Hmm.
on the other side of that child rearing and etc. um, really starting to further and further distance ourselves from one another, until eventually that bond broke, unfortunately. And so, then when you wake up on the other side of it, I I had times where I would just be sitting on the couch, literally staring at the wall, going like, what am I doing with my life now? What do I want to do? I don't have a partner to check in with if I want to go out and do something. I don't have to talk about my budget with anyone. Like all of that. And some of that, some guys that maybe even married, or their marriage is on rocks, you're like, man, that's freedom.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe in a little bit of a way, but in a bigger way, you don't realize the support you lose when you lose your partner.
Yes, I totally agree. Because I was interviewing a lady on my show, and she's just brilliant, just smart. She was married twice, and she was talking about the benefits of that men receive in marriage. And like you say, you just don't know until that person is gone. I mean, there's so much stuff. I mean, a lot of times women they play secretary a lot of times,
Mhm.
you know. Uh they have emotional labor. You know, it's that whole thing where they got everything going on in their mind, you know, kids and dentist appointments and are we moving here? Are the kids going to this school, that school, all these different things going on at once. And when you do lose that, like you feel it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, you feel it big time. And I
yeah.
mean, you feel that, and then you also, for me, like I said, I have three kids. Now I have five from a blended family, but um you also don't realize how much, I personally believe that all men have an inner feminine and an inner masculine,
Mhm.
and all women have an inner masculine and inner feminine, but they're stronger or more dominant when they have a partner. They can let the opposite of who they are kind of rest and not have to be as prominent. And then when you don't have that support, for me, former Marine who's working on learning how to have healthy masculinity, etc., the empathy and the compassion and the when my kids are sick, I mean, they would just be in bed crying for their mom. It's not that I wouldn't care for them, but the approach, the emotion, the energy put into that, they feel the difference of that. They feel the lack of that. And so having to put on that mom hat as a single dad or that dad hat as a single mom
Mhm.
isn't what we were originally wired to do when we raised kids. And so when you find yourself in that position of now I'm divorced and I have kids, it's not impossible. People do it all the time, but that's one of a thousand little things that you don't realize, that even if you have disagreements or arguments with your wife or your husband, that at their core they bring so much to the table that until that table is empty, you kind of take it for granted.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I remember when I was going through my divorce because I was married almost 15 years, and I, got into my apartment. And matter of fact, my ex-wife, she was even with me when I found the apartment. Like she was like, okay, she's like, basically like, I want to make sure you're good. And so I got the apartment, and first night there, it was cool. It was like, oh, okay, I'm finally okay. I don't have anything to worry about. We had a daughter, but my daughter wanted to be with her mom. That's another story. Um,
Yeah.
but that night, Josh, when it was time to go to bed and I was in the shower, man, I mean, I just bawled and just started crying. Like, I can't
Yep.
believe my whole life, 15 years you do life with this one person. And then
Yep.
all of a sudden, just like that, everything changes.
Yeah.
And like you
Yeah.
said, you're left with the pieces. Who am I now?
Yeah.
And some men don't handle that in the healthiest fashion, whether if that's, drugs or alcohol, or it could be, women,
Yep.
anything, gambling, things of that nature. And sometimes it takes some men longer than others to get through that process. Like who am I outside of my kids,
Yeah.
and my spouse? And a lot of men wrestle with that. Um, but there was a question I wanted to ask you about, uh, like, when did you know that you were healed from your divorce?
Mm, that is a really good question.
Or when did you
I
know that you had the courage to date again? Like I can actually
Yeah.
give somebody a clean slate without them being compared to my ex, that whole thing.
Yeah. No, that's good. Really good questions. I think that the reason I was kind of having a hard time finding that is because I don't think there is a moment. I still the one thing that I don't like, I don't love divorce, for a variety of reasons, right? think we're on the same page with that. But one thing I do appreciate is that my current wife, she was also divorced before we married. And so we understand that we've been married for 3 years, and there are days where my wife misses her ex. And I'm okay with, like, I'm not defensive about that. I understand that she's still, it's like, I say grief is like the waves in the ocean. Sometimes they lap up to your ankles, and sometimes you're in the middle of a tsunami and you don't know if you're coming up for air.
Yeah.
And when you first get a divorce, you're in that tsunami. But the waves still come, and so
Mhm.
sometimes they still lap up. And so giving space for that. But so I don't know if it's like, oh, now I'm healed, now I'm good. But that said, I would say that part of my journey going from having a gun to my head to healing was a combination of a lot of different things, a lot of different facets. One was getting into community.
Mhm.
For me, it was yoga, just finding yoga and um, being physically active, getting into community, and then also beginning to work with plant medicine.
Mhm.
I sat with ayahuasca, I worked with psilocybin, and then and a lot of that helped me purge a lot of that pain.
Mhm.
And also, I would say probably if there was a noticeable turning point, I actually did a self-guided session with MDMA, and I literally sat my wife down, not literally, actually, metaphorically, sat my wife down in front of me. And I just talked to her for probably about 3 hours. And
Real quick,
yeah,
can you break down MDMA? Can you just tell us for those who might not know?
yeah,
I'm
I
curious.
mean, some people call it the love drug. Ecstasy is kind of the party name for it. Molly's the street name. There's
Okay.
different things, but
Gotcha.
it's basically you can, just like any drug, you can abuse it,
Right.
and I would not recommend just going off and having fun with it,
Of course.
um, especially these days with fentanyl, etc. But for me, I was finding nuggets of healing through exploring these different things. And that's a whole different topic because I did some things wrong and got myself into some like emotional trouble I had to work myself out of because I just kind of dove off the deep end, and that's kind of who I am. But that said, MDMA is really it's a heart opening drug. It's a
Mm.
physical sensation, and so it softens your emotions. But you can also get your dopamine drained, your oh gosh, whatever the love drug or the love hormone.
Yeah, oxytocin.
Anyways, there
Oxytocin.
you go.
Oxytocin.
Yeah, so you get a flood of oxytocin, and um, and so it was from that state because I had even though I'd worked on a lot of things and was having progress, I was still kind of holding on to her, or holding on to the highlight reel of her, not the reality of her in some ways.
Mm.
And so when I took the MDMA and sat her down, just kind of in my mind's eye in front of me, from that open heart place, I was able to forgive her for things that had happened in our marriage, forgive her for things that had happened after our marriage. It was probably about a year and a half after our marriage. Apologize for things that I had done to her, and not just for the sake of, oh, it's not good to hold on to bitterness, you should say sorry, but actually feel, oh my gosh, man, I never realized how much this probably would have hurt you when I said this. I'm so sorry, and I worked through this list um, of things, and after that experience, I felt like I had really for the first time tangibly kind of emotionally let her go with love,
Mhm.
as well as in my own way taken ownership. And then on the back end of that, we, like I said, we've got 3 kids, so we still communicate, etc. I proactively started reaching out to her and apologizing, not verbatim from what I was saying when she was in front of, or like kind of metaphorically in front of me,
Mhm.
but and not necessarily in details, like I didn't say this, but when I called you fat, I'm sorry. Not like that, but just, hey, I'm really sorry for the ways that I hurt you through the divorce, and just know that I think that you're a good mom, and like letting that overflow and affirm the good in her, which um then she reciprocated, and now we're in a position where we co-parent, and I was at an event just this last weekend, and her mom and her boyfriend were all there with my kids. And like we're just at this place of, okay, we really hurt each other, and then we really actually forgave each other, and now we aren't together, but we are together in some capacity because we are raising kids.
Yes.
And how do we do that in a way that the kids not only feel love from us individually, but we can model that we can walk through a really painful experience and find love in a different capacity for one another on the other side of it. I think it's teaching them relationally by our actions more than we could ever teach them with our words.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, I mean, maybe I need to do a study on this because I'm sure there's a lot of study, but I wonder what's the difference when children who grow up maybe in a divorce, depending on the stage, of the age. Like,
Yeah.
how does that fare into their life later, opposed to say somebody who, they can't stand their ex-wife or, where the parents they rarely talk is just more about personal, you just go stay with your dad or you just go stay with your mom. We don't communicate, opposed to
Yeah.
those parents who effectively co-parent even though mom and dad isn't together. I wonder what that outcome kind of looks like for kids. I wonder like does that make them more relational or does that make them more graceful? Maybe when they're a little older, I don't know. But
Well, I mean, I'm biased, but I think my kids are pretty amazing, so, we'll say.
yeah.
Um, no, I mean, I know several people that one friend comes to mind that he's, finds himself in a position where his ex-wife is consistently speaking badly about him to the kids, to the point where now the kids don't want to be around dad, and all he wants is to be around them, right? And so there's just a lot of pain there. And really, what he's taught me and some other men that are in my circle that are in different but similar positions is really, as absolutely painful as it is, playing the long game and letting, they're going to grow up. It will be harder for them to realize the truth, but truth always wins in the end.
Yep.
And as they're adults, they'll realize the disconnect from what they heard from one parent versus what they experience once they have the free will and free choice. But that is one of the hardest, most painful things to ask a parent to do, is to play the long game. To not, when your ex is talking bad about you, to not be willing to do the tit for tat or to do the manipulation and put the kids in the middle. And then to not only that, but look for the good in the ex that you can communicate to the kids, and give them the benefit of the doubt, even if you know that they probably don't deserve it, and modeling that to their kids. They're going to grow up. Kids are super resilient and they're super aware. They're going to grow up and realize, you know what? Dad really never said anything bad about mom, and mom only bashed dad. Like, who do I want to become as an adult, as when I'm in my teenage years, and as a young adult, and they have to find that for themselves. But what you model to them is going to resonate way more than what you say to them, especially if you choose. Like, I remember my parents got a divorce, well, actually when I was in the Marines,
Mm.
and it wasn't it was messy and not fun, and all of that. And I remember going through my divorce, my mom said, well, Josh, the gift that I gave you kids is that I chose to never speak badly about your dad.
Mm.
And so that was modeled to me. So it enabled and empowered me to do that, even though there were times where I probably had a little bit of blood falling out of my mouth from biting my tongue when I hear, oh, mom said that you da 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 da. I'm like,
Yep.
oh, well, yeah, it may be that way. It may not. I'm not sure, but everything in you is wanting to go, what? She said
Mhm.
what? you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
But I think that speaks to the masculine, right? It is to a strong man is willing to take that blow and choose to be anchored and not reactionary, because the kids will feel that strength. They might not feel it in the moment, but that's what I mean by the long game. In the long run, they will notice that, you know what? Dad doesn't play these games. He doesn't fight. He doesn't go tit for tat. I want to be I want to be around that stability emotionally, or I want to become, if it's a young boy, I want to become someone that's like that, that's not in this constant state of reactionary or needing chaos or war to feel validated through using me as the proxy in this.
Yeah, I love that, man. You said so much because as you speak, I can think about my marriage, and this is no shade to my ex-wife or anything, but I remember when I was going through my divorce, we were separated, and my daughter come over on the weekend, and she would ask me like, Dad, I still don't know why you and mom are still getting divorced because I
Yeah.
never told her the reason. Because at the time she was like
Yeah.
13, 14. So I'm like, So I would always tell her, I was like, when you're older, I'll let you know everything. And she's like, no, I
Yeah.
want to know. And I'm like, no. But now you fast forward, she'll be 20, 22 in next month. And so it's like, now me and her have these conversations, and I never talked bad about her mom, never. And
Yeah.
now that she's older, she come back to me and our relationship is good, and she's like, Dad, I understand now. But
Yeah.
like you said, my tongue, Josh, I mean, I look like Dracula. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to,
Yeah.
you know, but like you say, to play that long game, and very few people have that self-control to play that long term
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. And
But
even, I talking to my mom and kind of learning from what she modeled. I have younger, I mean, my oldest is almost 16 and youngest is 6 or just turned 7.
Mhm.
And so we're still in the middle of that. And like I said, our my ex and I are still at a good place, but they have asked those kinds of questions.
Mhm.
And one thing that I've done is um, anytime that they press to the point where I'll age appropriately share something, not like details. It's almost like the sex conversation, right? You're not gonna share everything when they're 8, but you also want to create a culture of safety to talk about it, and so you age appropriately discuss things.
Yep.
But I've always framed it where even if I say I don't know anything off the top of my head, but as a rule of thumb, if I am sharing anything about my experience with my ex to my kids, and there are times where I'm saying I will tell them, especially my 16-year-old, I'm not going to share X, Y, or Z with you because I don't want to influence your relationship with your mom for better or for worse. That is your relationship, and I
Mhm.
want you to have it. And so I no longer have that same intimate relationship, but you still do. And so I'm not going to share this. But then when I do share some things, I always frame it where I start with where I fell short or I take ownership for my side of the fence in this, it's like, we both messed up and hurt each other. And I was a shell of a man. And in that, I didn't do a follow through in a lot of ways. And so I can see how your mom was really hurt. And so out of that hurt and that pain, she may have done this or that or whatever, but it's not, if you're going to talk about areas that are her shortcomings, regardless of their age, I highly recommend you start with your shortcomings to show your humanity to your kids first and foremost, so that they can understand there was two broken people that couldn't make it work.
I love that. That is, yeah, that's so mature because we don't talk about that enough, man.
Yeah.
Because like I say, some people they want that instant gratification. They can't wait to go to town to tell someone about how horrible they were to you, your ex, they can't wait to tell.
Hmm.
And a lot of times our kids are the ones who have to get hit with the shrapnel of our mess,
Exactly.
unfortunately. And it's just so common. So who or what inspired you to give marriage another try?
Good sex with my wife. Oh no.
Good one.
I mean, it played a factor. Let's be honest here. Um, it's funny because even when we were dating, my current wife and I were dating, I told her probably, I don't know, a month into it, hey, I just want to let you know I'm never getting married again. And so like if you're okay with that, then great, we can continue this. But if you're looking for marriage at the end of this relational road, you're not going to find it. So I just want you to know that. Now, context, I was saying that out of still pain from the divorce. And so I'm basically doing preventative pain management where, hey, if I never get married, then I'll never get divorced, so I'll never be hurt, right? Like just in hindsight, the logic of it is so full of fallacies. But to her credit, she just said, okay, well, we're not there anyways, so like thanks for sharing, and I'm just enjoying where we're at, and then a couple months later, I'm like, it comes up in some capacity, and I'm like, hey, just let you know, like I don't need the piece of paper from the government to tell me that we're together if we're going to be together. Like I was stubborn about it for a while.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that there is something to be said about the covenant and the choice. And so when I stopped letting my pain communicate to try to defend me, I slowly began to open up to the possibility of it. And and yeah, just like a lot of things, I there's not many things in my life that were a light switch moment. It
Hmm.
was more of a progression to arrive somewhere.
Hmm.
And it was her patience with my process and being willing to see through my pain and see that that's what was communicating in that moment to let me then arrive to the place of like, hey, you know what, I actually want you to be my wife, not just a roommate or a partner or
Yeah.
whatever, like I want my queen.
Hmm.
I'm stepping more into that king authority, and that as far as the stages of men, that's kind of like the final stage, and I'm still in the process of stepping into that. But um the more I pictured myself evolving into that, I wanted a queen by my side. And so um I remember when I reached the point where I said, okay, let's do this, just to see the look on her face,
Hmm.
right? Because it was what she deeply wanted. And um that helped me know that that was the right call to do.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, that's good, man. I Man, this has been a deep conversation. I want to take a quick breather and I want to take a
Yeah.
moment from our sponsors at Love Fearlessly. And so this is our Love Fearlessly intimacy card deck. 30 questions that my wife and I created for date night, for maybe you're engaged, maybe it's your third date. Maybe you're married. I mean, marriage, you're always evolving, you're always changing. So these questions are something that my wife and I take very serious, that we had to hammer out some things. And I don't think this should work, but what are those heart questions that's going to help me to really see who you are as a person? So Josh, I want to pull a card from the deck. You can find this at
Yeah.
secretarymarried.com. It'll be in the description below. So here's a question for you, Josh. How did you manage hurt and disappointment growing up?
I didn't. I thought I could bottle it up and it would go away. Um, for me, my dad, as I got older, I had three brothers and no sisters. So, lots of broken bones and stitches and BB guns and whatever. But as we got older, he would learn to rough modeled to me in the sense of didn't have things going my way, or I felt a lot of pain in something, I would turn to what was modeled to me, which was rage, and using basically anger as that protector emotion from the softer emotion behind it of hurt and pain and disappointment. And so that looked like making a lot of dumb decisions as a teenager, and getting into fights, and really what it was, when I was 16 years old, my dad left our family, and he said that Josh, had turned the family against him, and that when we decided we wanted to love him, he would come back because I was the black sheep. I stood up to him and fought back and those kinds of things.
Hmm. Hmm.
And and so for 2 years until I was 18 and joined the Marines, I didn't communicate with him, but he would come over and he would pick up my brothers for like one-on-one dates and things like that. And so I was just in a ton of pain, right? And so then that pain translated to just being reckless,
Hmm.
finding drugs and alcohol and
Hmm.
getting into fights and running the streets, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So really, it was kind of the Marines that, in a sense, saved me from some of that. But then that further drove home that you don't show those emotions from the
Hmm.
military, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so it's been a journey to unwind that and learn how to be okay with letting people see the hurt or help heal the hurt and be present with the hurt and the disappointment. But especially growing up, um, I mean, when I was younger, it was unfiltered, just like all of us as kids. And then because of our environment and our conditions, I learned how to suppress it. But then there were times where even I would be so hurt and frustrated that then I would start to cry just out of frustration.
Hmm.
And inevitably, then kids would make fun of me for crying.
Hmm.
And then that would lead to even more anger and then rage because I was getting picked on, because I just didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to communicate it, etc. So I did not have good or healthy outlets for it at all, which is why I'm so passionate about not only continuing my own journey of that, but also helping others kind of take those lids off of where they've put the caps and learn healthy ways to navigate that.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Yeah, that's good because I can tell even listening to your podcast how you break down so much, especially with men and the things that we deal with, and it's relatable. That's the thing that I love the most, especially listening to
Yeah,
your podcast and the vulnerability there. I love it, and I think as men, I think we're starting to see a little more men being honest and
we
open
are.
about how I'm starting to see a shift, which is a great thing because I mean, you think about our parents or our grandparents. I only can imagine, you know, the way manhood was back then.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and they did what they had to do, but just to kind of see
Yeah.
this on the horizon now is a good thing.
I think you just touched on a really important point, which is depending on what your childhood was, everybody's is different, right? Um, my grandfather from my dad's dad, he was
Mhm.
a drill instructor during Vietnam. So if you just kind of picture
Mhm.
6'4" big dude, right? And my dad said that he never in his entire life heard his dad say the words "I love you" to him. And that was one of his biggest pain points, right? And so that was his reality. And even though I'm talking about these hurtful things that I experienced, if I look at what his environment was, he actually did way better than his dad. What he was presented, he was working through his own stuff. And he still, to this day, we pretty much talk about the weather and the tools that he bought and what he doesn't know how to go deep. That wasn't modeled to him.
Right.
But he also, my grandpa was an atheist and my dad became a Christian. And a lot of my moral compass was because of what he instilled in me. And like there was good that came from it. He moved that needle forward to a healthier version of masculinity. And I took that and now I'm moving that. And now I have my kids. I've got two boys, three girls and two boys. My two boys, I have my 16-year-old boy who literally hands me my phone or his phone when he's going through something with his this girl that he was dating. Is like, Dad, I'm feeling like really anxious about this right now. Can you read through this and give me advice? And so he's way ahead of where I was at 16.
Yeah.
And I know I'm messing him up in some ways, right? But the whole idea is that we continue to evolve.
Yes.
And I think as a society, there's all kinds of chaos and wars and everything going on. But there is, I think, a deep longing for a men are finding permission to unapologetically be themselves again because masculinity was under assault for quite a while,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's beginning to shift.
Yeah.
And unapologetically them doesn't mean unapologetically be an asshole and a player and take
Right.
advantage of people. It's actually learning how to do the opposite of that and find what healthy masculinity is and find your core of men that you run with and you open your heart to. You don't do that with everybody, but you do that and you choose to be vulnerable, and then you find the strength that comes from that, and then hopefully you model that to that next generation.
Yes, yes. Love it. Great, great answer, man. Yeah, this, yeah, I want to just edit and just put this up today, because it's so needed. This is a great conversation. But my wife, but your wife did say that she's like, you're gonna have a good time, She put it out there, so I was like, I need to talk to
Oh,
him.
good, good, good.
How can men begin to rebuild their self-worth and purpose after the end of a marriage? I know you talked about yours, but like, what is some advice that you give to some of your clients if they're going through a divorce, and like, how do you help them to rebuild themselves?
I think one of the most important things that men need to do to find themselves again, or maybe even for the first time authentically,
Mhm.
is to find other men who are willing to be vulnerable with you. And you may, if you're listening to this, you may be thinking, Josh, you don't know my situation. I don't have anyone. Like, my parents are dead and I don't have any brothers, and I've been working and I'm not close to any of my coworkers. Like, I don't have anyone. And what I would say to that is, you can choose to be the victim of your circumstances, or you can choose to begin to pivot out of that victim mentality and into your inner strength by going out of your way to find them. And that is, if it's going to a conference or a retreat or a something that's around masculinity, like you said, with all that needle moving as far as more and more men, there are men's coaches out there. I'm not even just saying me. There are dozens or hundreds of men's coaches out there. There are men's retreats. There are plant medicine ceremonies. There are,
Mhm.
I mean, I am something called a guardian at Preston, Smiles, and Alexi. They put on something called the Bridge in Austin, which is somatic work. There are, which is, a lot of that inner body nervous system work, and it's like, get in the room, get in the presence of those that have navigated through this, or that maybe not have navigated through your exact circumstances, but have worked through hard times and found a way to get through it. Because I promise you, like, and if I said this to myself going through my divorce, I would have punched myself in the face. And that is that I promise you, what you're feeling is not your new normal. But
Mhm.
in that moment, it feels so real. It feels like this is what my life is now.
Yep.
What the hell am I supposed to do?
Yep.
And it will not change unless you're willing to change. And that begins with reaching out. If you have nobody to reach out to, find somewhere that you can go to begin to build those relationships. Because as someone who has struggled with depression, who's had a gun to my head, who has a tendency to isolate and lone wolf, doing it alone, it is possible, but you're only making that journey and that process 100 times harder than you need to.
Yeah. 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 That is so true. I agree 100% because uh, you know, I believe God made us interdependent, not independent, right? And so we
Yes.
need that community, and it doesn't have to be a bunch of people. I know sometimes we think of
No.
community and we think of, the block, the neighborhood, the whole thing, but it can just be one person. And I believe once we open ourselves up to willing to be committed to change or to step out of our comfort zone, I believe, God will position people in your way to reach you as long as you're open. Because when you're hard-headed and stubborn, man, it's it's hard for people
It
to
is.
constantly
It
stay
is.
engaged with you, right? You know.
I call it the relationship bullseye, because if you think about a bullseye, there's that tiny little red center, right? And that's you and God. That's you and God in the center. You need to have that anchor. But if you hide in that tiny little bullseye, relationally, you're missing out on a lot. But then if you look at the centric rings that go out, that next circle, that's your inner circle. That's 2 to 3, maybe 4 guys.
Yep.
That's the guys that you build relationship with, that you cry with, that you call when you have to, that you whatever. And then there's another ring, and then it's people that you know that maybe you hang out at a barbecue every now and then, but you're not pouring your heart out to necessarily. But you could be transparent, but maybe not vulnerable, right?
Mm.
You can be honest about your hard times, but you're not necessarily opening your heart to them. And
Yeah.
then there's another ring, and maybe that's your coworker. Like you have rings that are built on relational equity with God at the center. But if you hide in the center because God's the only one that's safe to you, you're
Mhm.
limiting your ability to be able to heal because it's the people hurt you. And so you need people to heal you. You
Yeah.
need both.
Yeah. Wow. Ah, yeah, I love that, man. Ah, this is so good. All right, Josh. Well, we got a couple of minutes left, and
Yeah.
since this was a heavy episode, I mean, there's so many takeaways from this. I want to have I want to make it a little light. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so this is our
Oh,
bonus.
you mean my sex comment wasn't light enough for you? No.
Hey,
Go
hey,
ahead.
hey, and that's an episode within itself, right?
It is.
That's a
Yeah.
whole episode. Uh, yeah, we're gonna do Josh Uncut. There's no wrong
Okay.
answer. Uh, whatever comes to mind. Okay. So, what is the biggest mistake you see men make when when they're married, like, and their marriage is struggling? What do you think is a man's biggest mistake? And just being, just the accountability as far as a man. What do you think a man's biggest
Now,
mistake in marriage when they're struggling?
wait a minute. I thought you said we were going to end on a light note. This is the biggest mistake. Okay. All right. All right. Um, no, the biggest mistake, man, we make lots of them, don't we?
Yeah.
I think as someone who has gone through a divorce, and sometimes it's impossible to work through it, but when you're in the middle of that pressure cooker of pain and finger pointing and all of that, uh, I don't think men think long term enough as far as the implications of what they're actually walking away from.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's real. Yeah, because feelings are real, man. My old mentor, he used to tell me, emotions make wonderful servants, but terrible masters. And I was just like,
Exactly.
yeah. Huh. Uh, who who makes a better spouse? Someone never married or someone divorced?
I don't know. Um, that's my popcorn answer. I don't know. Someone who's never married or someone who is divorced. Here's the thing: whoever you marry, they're going to have baggage. Doesn't matter who you marry, and so you could argue that someone who was married comes with more baggage, but they also come with more wisdom and experience. And someone who hasn't been married comes with less baggage, but they have less experience relationally.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like saying, um, you know, what sex position do you prefer? It all feels good. No, just trying to.
Some
um,
positions are, but anyway, go ahead.
yeah, that's true. Some just hurt. Anyways, yeah. So that would be my answer. Is that I don't think that everyone that there should be a one or the other because it's like living in Alaska versus living in Florida. Regardless of where you land, there's going to be trade-offs. And only you can decide if that trade-off is what you want. The long dark nights in Alaska, but the amazing untapped nature that you have, or the hot, sweaty no-see-ums in Florida, but the beautiful beach with the ocean. Like you get to choose. There's trade-offs, there's going to be challenges, but there's also beauty that's beyond what you can imagine before you actually go there and land on it. And that's what I would say that marriage is. It's one of those destinations that's chalked with so much beauty, but it also has trade-offs regardless of who you pick.
Yeah, that is so true. Because some people have that myth of the perfect person, and I tell people, I'm like, look,
Doesn't exist.
yeah, we're all beautifully broken. Like we all got something. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
So once people get over that, to my single people, it's like take your pick. The song
If
said,
you're real quick on that, if you're someone who's looking for the perfect person, um, it's normally I had a friend who is still single to this day in his 40s, and he has met and dated some amazing women. Literally, there was a girl that was looked the way he dreamed, had the same spiritual beliefs, had the same dreams and desires, all of that, but her feet were too big, right? Her feet were too big. And really what it is it's never that you're actually looking for the perfect person. It's normally that you're afraid of something else. And
Mm,
so, what are you so afraid of that you have to find an imperfection and fixate on it to then justify running away?
I love it. Yeah. The song says, "What every rose has its thorn," huh?
Exactly.
Man. What's harder for you to say? A, I apologize. B, I need help. C, I love you. D, I was wrong.
Oh, I need help. That
Yeah.
has been, yeah, without question. Like I said, I have a propensity to isolate, and I have found myself, you call it from experience in the Marines or whatever it may be, how I'm wired. I find myself in leadership positions often,
Hmm.
and from that, and then also, being an entrepreneur for the last 15 years, asking for help. I know logically, talking to you, that is what builds relationship. That's what builds community. That's what you need. You shouldn't build alone. But my inner dialogue often in those moments is that's weak. And so because I'm a man, I don't want to show weakness, right? And yet the times that I have confronted that and asked for help is where I've found the most healing. I found the deepest relationships. I found the most momentum in the things that I'm building. I just need help. But it's still to this day hard for me to do.
Yeah. I understand, man. Yeah, ego and pride and like you said, the inner dialogue,
Yep.
man. Yeah, I mean, it can be a real struggle. And the funny thing is, some people have your answers. You're just a question away,
Yes.
or at least asking the right question, right?
Yes. Yes.
And the door not even locked. All you had to do is push it. But
Yep. Absolutely.
we got
Absolutely.
13 keys trying to, it's like, no, you don't need to do all that.
Yeah.
Last question. Is it easier to love yourself or someone else?
I think it goes in line with your other question, someone else for me.
Mm,
It's been a journey to learn how to love myself.
mm, mm,
Um, I a big chunk, I would even say to this day, what I am walking out is everyone deals with imposter syndrome in some capacity and some variation throughout their life. But I can literally remember all the way back to middle school where I felt like an imposter. Like I felt like a fraud. And even in the Marines, there were things like, oh, well, I know these guys that did this in the Marines during that time, and I didn't do that. And so just disqualifying and beating myself up when I fall short. Like I used to perfect that, and I still have a propensity to do that sometimes.
mhm.
I would say in the last probably 5 years, I have grown in my capacity to love myself,
Yeah.
but I still definitely have to be aware of
Mhm.
my old default mode network of responding to that self-criticism instead of that self-love and self-affirmation.
Yeah. No, I love it because I had a therapist on the show and he was telling me one of the building blocks to self-confidence is keeping your word to yourself, and also
Yes.
is being kind to yourself. Because he was like, you wouldn't allow somebody else to talk to you the way you talk to yourself.
Hmm.
And that helped me to transform my thoughts. Because soon as I hit that dip and I'm starting to go down that hole, I have to remind myself, okay, Sean, that's my default setting, but that's not who I am. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot like they your parent do the best they can,
Mm.
but it's often the areas that cause the most pain from your childhood. You leave the home, but then you begin to treat yourself the way your parents did, often in the worst ways.
Yep.
And yet you try to do better for your kids. And so you're pivoting and you're focusing on that and you're paying attention to that. And how do I be a better dad and a more present dad, etc. But you're still parenting yourself, that inner child, going, "What the hell's wrong with you?" Da, 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 da. And so learning how to not just love your kids better, but also love yourself better is a journey because it's so much easier to look outward than inward.
Yes. Oh my God, man. And on that note, man, this has been a phenomenal episode, Josh. Man, thank you so much. Nothing short of what I expected. Let everyone know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, just my last name's a little wonky to spell, but we'll probably have it in the show notes, but
Yeah.
just joshcearbaugh.com.
Mhm.
And then also the podcast, that's kind of the central hub, is multifacetedmasculinity.com, or and then it's any Spotify, Apple, whatever, everywhere that podcasts are.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. Well, Bravehearts community, you heard it here. I mean, Josh, go follow the podcast and go check out his website as well. I mean, just a phenomenal episode. Thank you so much for being a guest. Like I said, I'll have everything linked up in the description. If you are watching this via YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, share this with someone, put this in your group chat with you and your boys. You know, it's like four of y'all. Put that in the group chat, watch the video, and then go back into the group chat, and then y'all talk about it, right?
There you go.
I know, and then that helped get my watch hours up. So make sure you drop this in your group chat. If you are listening to this via podcast, make sure you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. By doing so, put you in a drawing for a free Amazon gift card. Who doesn't like free stuff? Uh, this has been a phenomenal episode. Thanks once again, Josh, for being a guest. This is Sean Heineman, and we are out.